Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report News Hour for the 23rd day, the 12th month, 16th year of Changi. Tim Miller sitting in for the second king, Chanuka Young Jing-moon, and we are now in the final countdown, just a week away now from True God's Day and the new year on the heavenly calendar, the Changi calendar. Um, Time is moving along, moving along, moving along. Right. Okay, let's go and see what's happening around the kingdom right now. In Chongpyeong, Tennessee, we have 31 degrees and clear. Intervals of clouds and sunshine today, high of 65. Wow, nice spring day. Tonight, rain at times, low of 47, and a nice spring night as well. Father's hometown in Cheongju, North Korea, currently cloudy and 28, clearing as the night goes on, getting down to 20 degrees. Tomorrow, hazy sun, high of 44. I think that counts for spring as well. And well, Northeast Pennsylvania, not so much. Okay. Currently 14 degrees and light snow. Winter lasts long in Pennsylvania. And today, snow, sleet, freezing rain. Early this morning, cloudy, high of 36. Tonight, a bit of snow, sleet, freezing rain this evening. Yes, yes, this is Pennsylvania. Mostly cloudy and a low of 29 tonight. Oh my goodness. And let's see here. What did Punxsutawney Phil say? I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, right now in Limestone County, Texas, at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground, cloudy and 62. Getting up to 75 today, mainly cloudy and breezy tonight, mostly cloudy with a couple of showers, low of 52. And at the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 38 with a shower going on. A passing evening shower or two, otherwise considerable cloudiness tonight, 33 degrees for a low tonight, and tomorrow intervals of clouds and sunshine, high of 49. And at the let's see, what is this? This is the Gunma Palaces in Japan, 45 degrees and mostly cloudy. 33 for a low tonight, partly to mostly cloudy with a shower in spots late. Tomorrow, rain and drizzle in the morning, otherwise mostly cloudy and cooler, high of 50 degrees. Guangzhou, China, it is now 68 and clear. Increasing clouds through the night, low of 59. Tomorrow, warm. Decreasing clouds, high of 77. So all in all, I would say that, yeah, except for Pennsylvania, spring has sprung. All right, let's go. Father's word. Father's word in the Tunson. And we are in the book Life of True Filial Piety. Father speaking here July 1st, 1990. Okay. And Father asked the question. Aha, another question. Right? We had a question yesterday. We have another one today. 어떤 사람이 중신이냐? So, what kind of person is a loyal patriot? Is a patriot? 충신 is uh, loyal subject is the literal translation, but we translate it into English usually as patriot. So, what kind of person is a patriot? 모든 강요들 가운데 내가 왕을 사랑하는 데 있어서 똑도 하나 해다주고 뭣도 해다주고 왕을 모시는 신하들이나 왕 후를 모시는 신녀들이 전부 다 책임을 못하더라도 그걸 보고 가만히 있는 것이 아니라 그걸 대해 그걸 대해 잔소리하면서 내가 그 이상 해가지고 그 환경이 it's a long sentence. 그 환경이 그럴 수 있게끔 가르쳐주고 잊어버리는 것입니다. All right, so it's a long sentence. So basically, I'm not going to try to go through the entire literal translation, but basically, he's saying that if the other members of the cabinet, in other words, the king's cabinet, are not able to fulfill their responsibility, or if the women who are attending the queen are not able to fulfill their responsibility, um, then the patriot or the loyal subject is a person who is not going to just stand by and ignore that and just pretend he doesn't see it, pretend that everything is okay, but um, to correct those people and and uh, do more than they are doing to serve the king more than they are serving him, or serve the queen more than women are serving the queen, and teach them, teach the people so that they can do their jobs better. 됐다 하는 것이 아니라 더 잘해야지 해야 됩니다. So it's not the person who says, okay, that's enough, but instead it's the person who says, oh, you can do better. You can do better. Okay. All right. It's interesting. All right. All right. That may be one that is intended for me. Okay. All right, let's go see what's going on. Let's see. I wanted to, well, I guess not a whole lot going on today, but all right. Well, let's start with this one here. Um, okay. As the Ukraine war drags on, Trump hits Putin by squeezing his proxies. This, okay, squeezing Russia's proxies. Let's maybe expand this a bit. Okay, President Donald Trump vowed to impose very serious consequences on Russia in 2025 if it didn't commit to a deal to end its war on Ukraine. And, unfortunately, we've heard news, oh, the United States and Ukraine have come to an agreement. Zelensky has agreed. But then they take it to Russia and they say, oh, no, no compromise. Sorry. And so things just sort of go back to square one. And that seems to be Russia's policy that, you know what, no matter what happens, we're just not going to compromise. We're just going to keep on grinding. We know that our soldiers are dying and so forth and so on, but we're just going to keep on going on until something happens. Either we run out of soldiers completely or we get what we want in Ukraine. That seems to be what Russia is, or at least what Putin is planning on right now. So it says here, as the war nears its 4-year anniversary in late February, and what is it now? Just less than 2 weeks from now, it'll be the 4-year anniversary. National security experts tell Fox News Digital that Russia is facing tangible consequences for the war. Those are through its network of proxy countries that have directly endured the might of the U.S. military and subsequently left Russia with fewer streams of revenue, the source and resources, they say. And the president's moves as it pertains to Russia are really strategic, Morgan Murphy, who previously served as the senior public diplomacy advisor to the president's special envoy to Ukraine in 2025, told Fox News Digital. So if you look at what he's done with Iran and with Venezuela, these are two Russian proxies, right? Iran is a close ally of Russia. Well, China as well. And so I think those actions by President Trump have had a couple of effects. One is the effect on Russia. The other is the effect on China. And we'll talk about China in a minute. They sell a lot of drones to Russia. Murphy, who is running as a GOP Senate candidate to represent Alabama, continued. Venezuela was again a proxy of Russia here in our hemisphere, and Trump is in the process of taking Iran off the table. He's certainly taken Venezuela off the chessboard, and that has to change Putin's calculus because he sees in President Trump a president who follows what he says he's going to do. Russia's war on Ukraine has persisted since February 24th, 2022, about a year after Trump's first administration ended and during Joe Biden's presidency. Trump had campaigned on ending the war upon his second inauguration in 2025, but ending the war has proven more difficult, a whole lot more difficult than anticipated as the U.S. continues negotiations. So, something I've been saying that either one or the other has to happen. Either Zelensky removed, or Putin is removed, but I don't see how these two men are going to come to an agreement. White House officials spoke to Digital said Trump is driven by humanitarian concerns and wants the conflict ended to stop the needless loss of life. The official added that in recent months, his team has made major headway toward a settlement, pointing to Trump's own remarks that very good things are developing between Ukraine and Russia. Let's wait until we see it, I think. According to the official, recent negotiations in Abu Dhabi in the UAE were substantive and constructive, with U.S., Ukrainian, and Russian delegations agreeing to a 314-person prisoner exchange, the first in 5 months. Okay, well, these prisoner exchanges have taken place, but they don't seem to have an effect on the overall picture. While more work is ahead, the official argued that breakthroughs like this show sustained diplomacy is producing real, measurable progress toward ending the war. Measurable progress. Yeah, I disagree. You know, yeah, you can exchange prisoners all you want. Yeah, that's great. I'm happy for the prisoners. I'm happy for their families, but it's not ending the war. It's very different from ending the war. Trump launched a series of strikes on Iran in June 2025 that hobbled the country's covert nuclear program. Massive protests swept Iran in December 2025 as citizens spoke out against the government and its cratering economy, the cratering currency. Iran violently cracked down on the nationwide protests, with thousands of citizens reportedly killed, and the Trump administration warned Iran that it would face U.S. military action if the executions and killings continued. And so far, that has not happened. The U.S. and Iran held discussions in Oman Friday as Tehran continues to obscure its nuclear ambitions with military intervention on the table as the U.S. seeks to prevent Iran from having nuclear weapons capabilities on the table, right? So nothing yet, no actual action yet. Iran and Russia have grown into a tighter wartime partnership in recent years, with U.S. and allied officials citing Iran's supply of armed drones and other defense cooperation that has helped power Russia's attack in Ukraine, drawing the two heavily sanctioned regimes closer economically and militarily. All right, well, yeah, yeah, I don't see a whole lot happening though, unless I think we're basically waiting for someone to take out Putin. I think. I mean, Zelensky. I don't know what would happen uh, if Zelensky were to go. I'm not really sure, but if we're going to have some major change, major development in this situation, I think Putin is going to have to go, right? It's just about. Is the UK about to have its first Muslim prime minister? That's interesting. Let's take a peek at this before we go to what I was going to go to next. Is UK going to have its first Muslim prime minister? That would be historic. Okay. Starmer's implosion could hand Britain its first Muslim prime minister. Okay, that if this is clickbait, then that's pretty good clickbait. To imagine. Ah, my goodness. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is fighting for his political life, and speculation about his replacement has centered on an unlikely figure, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, who would become Britain's first Muslim prime minister if elevated to the role. My goodness gracious sakes alive. It hasn't happened yet, and this may be clickbait. I don't know. Starmer's troubles stem from his December 2024 decision to appoint Peter Mendelsohn, a veteran labor grandee, as Britain's ambassador to Washington, despite allegedly knowing about Mendelssohn's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Newly released Epstein documents revealed Mendelssohn maintained contact with the convicted sex offender after his 2008 guilty plea. Okay, but tell us about this. No, we're not interested in that. Come on, this other one. Okay, yet Starmer hasn't resigned. Okay, but international headlines have crowned Shabana Mahmoud as Starmer's likely successor. But betting markets disagree. The 45-year-old Home Secretary sits fifth in Polymarket's odds, behind former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, Health Secretary Wes Streeting, Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, and former Labour leader Ed Miliband. Okay. Her name keeps surfacing for two reasons. First, she holds one of the great offices of state, running a department responsible for immigration and security. High visibility work that projects prime ministerial in ways that, for example, overseeing energy policy does not. Secondly, she represents an unusual political paradox. Born in Birmingham to Pakistani Kashmiri parents, she identifies openly as a blue labor social conservative and an immigration hardliner. She's introduced what she calls the most substantial reform to the UK's asylum system in a generation, including a 20-year pathway to permanent residency for asylum seekers, proposals to restrict European Convention on Human Rights protections, and visa sanctions on countries that won't accept deportees. Okay, well, I guess we will wait and see what happens. I guess Starmer would have to make the decision to resign, and then, as it says here, uh, British people do not vote for their prime minister directly; they vote for members of parliament. And that's the same as in Japan. And whichever party commands a majority in the House of Commons forms the government. That's the same as in Japan. The prime minister is simply the leader of that party. Yes. Okay. If Starmer resigns, there is no snap election. Labour holds an internal leadership contest. Candidates need support from at least 81 MPs, then face a vote of party members. The winner walks into 10 Downing Street without the public casting a ballot. Okay, so that's also the system in Japan. Britain cycled through three conservative prime ministers between 2019 and 2024 using exactly this mechanism. If Starmer goes, the leadership race probably comes down to Rayner versus Streeting, both more established figures with clearer factional bases. Mahmoud lacks the internal party support and faces skepticism from Labour's progressive wing. Okay, so maybe this is clickbait after all. Maybe she does not actually have a chance. But I guess it's going to happen eventually, though, isn't it? The way things are going there. Yeah. Ah, yes. Of course, in the U.S., we may have a Hindu first lady pretty soon. So, yeah, Asian religions are taking over, maybe over the long term. All right, let's see. I wanted to go to, uh, well, let's do this. Yeah, let's do this one first. I was going to go to China, but let's do this one first. Okay. Inside Democratic Socialist extreme plan for Los Angeles, seizing property, replacing cops, and closing jails. And of course, Democratic Socialist is New York already has a Democratic Socialist mayor, and I think he has also proposed some of these things there for New York. A radical left-wing group in Los Angeles has published a shocking 40-page roadmap to transform the nation's second largest city into a bizarre socialist experiment. The Democratic Socialists of America's LA chapter wants to straight up seize private property through a creative use of eminent domain. Take control of your neighborhood's grocery store and replace cops with unarmed social workers while shutting down jails. They're coming, and this is the product of people in uh, ivory towers, basically. People sit in their college campuses and dream these things up, and and it's and we're we're about to see what happens with it in New York. How long has he been in office now? About 40 days in New York, and already he's got this huge deficit in the budget, and he's blaming his predecessor, of course. That's what you're supposed to do. But uh, he's going to fill that deficit, I think, by taxing the rich, and he expects the rich to just sit there while they come along with the guillotine and slaughter them all. And of course, they're not going to do that. This is not 1789 in France. They're going to just move to Florida or to Texas or wherever. And so it's already on the road to failure in New York, but of course, LA, they got to be different. Their communist fever dream, whilst wish list, and they forgot to put a space there, includes banning Airbnbs, grabbing golf courses for public housing, allowing non-citizen immigrants to vote in local elections, enforces school curriculum that supports social justice, and eliminating all fossil fuels by fuel use by 2035. So no more gas stations in LA, right? If you want to buy gas, you got to go outside LA, I guess. 3,500 member group has already helped to elect several candidates to local office and previously backed Nithya Raman, a DSA member now running for mayor. They openly trashed the Democratic Party establishment as a capitalist sellouts and want to build working class power. Well, they don't say workers' paradise. I guess that phrase has sort of died, I guess, through what they call a socialist mass organization. Oh, yeah, mass organization. This is the kind of thing they love to talk about. Yes, 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 yes. The manifesto published in 2025 is more than 9,000 words long. Yes, that's right. Listen, communists get paid by the word. their their manifestos are always very, very long. Gives an insight into the policies that a potential Mayor Rahman has signed up to as a DSA member and could try to implement in LA. It targets the status quo coalition of elected officials, real estate developers, billionaires, nonprofits, and even some union leaders who supposedly sold out workers. They think they can actually pull this off in 6 to 8 years through local elections and organizing. We are on the burning edge of the economic climate and moral crises that define this generation. They're on the burning edge. It's burning. The manifesto warns, adding ominously, the choice remains socialism or barbarism. A non-exhaustive but rather exhausting list of just some of their demands here. Seizing privately owned housing and build city-owned municipal enterprises and expropriate corporations. So basically, importing Maduro's Venezuela to LA, of course, right? That's what it is. Look, so nationalize uh, or expropriate corporations in essential industries, groceries, restaurants, internet, etc. Oh, yeah, the expropriating the internet. Yeah, that'd be something. No censorship there, right? No. Grocery stores and restaurants. make all public transportation free, of course. Who's going to pay the drivers? No, 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 they work for free. The buses, trains, and bike share. Publicly acquire and operate all energy systems, full public takeover of utilities. Reclaim private and public golf courses via zoning. Divest, yeah, okay, so, wow. And ban all unhosted short-term rentals. Vacancy tax on empty housing units. And all means testing for child development programs. Okay. Well, so this is the communist dream that they're trying to bring about, right? So we will see how this works out for LA. And I think that basically they're trying to do the same thing in New York, so we can watch in New York as well. Alrighty then, so let's go to China. So China has told its banks to scale back on their exposure to U.S. Treasuries. And that happened, I think it happened yesterday. Um, and I think some people are maybe a little bit looking at this a little bit confused. They think that, oh, this is, it's part of the trade war or something like that, and China is really trying to punish President Trump. But I think people who look at the numbers come to a different conclusion. Actually, China has been reducing its holdings of U.S. Treasuries quite a bit over the past several years. Let's see here, which one of these? Okay, and right now they're actually behind the UK. This is as of September of 2025. They're at $700 billion, and actually now they're over the past since September they've reduced it even further, so they're less than $700 billion. And the UK now has increased its holdings quite a bit, 865 billion. But apparently, this is partly because hedge funds in other places, when they buy U.S. Treasuries, they park them in the UK. So it's not necessarily, the result of a trade surplus or something like that. Japan, just in September, they had just under $1.2 trillion. Since then, Japan has increased their holdings to a little bit above $1.2 trillion. But this is what I was saying yesterday, that yes, Japan has very high debt, national debt, but they also hold a lot of assets, including a lot of U.S. Treasuries. At one point, they have more U.S. Treasuries than any other country in the world, and this is holding steady. And of course, Japan is collecting interest on all this $1.2 trillion, and so their interest payments are not as bad as you might expect. In other words, yes, they are having to pay interest on their very high debt themselves, but they're collecting a lot of debt, a lot of interest payments from the U.S. So anyway, China has shrunk to 700 billion, and Canada is bringing up number 4 here, despite all the fuss and muss. They're nearly $500 billion of U.S. debt, and then you got Belgium. Belgium, I think, also is a place where companies deposit their treasuries when they buy them. And Cayman Islands, of course, and Luxembourg, of course, also. So these Belgium, Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, they're not buying them. The government's not purchasing, or they're not purchasing U.S. debt to themselves, but rather the hedge funds and others that purchase this debt park them here and so forth. Okay, and then France and Ireland and Taiwan, so forth and so on, and South Korea down here at 142 billion, right? So anyway, the point here is that China has been reducing its holdings. It used to be number 1, but now they've come down now to number 3. But if you look at the yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury, and this is the 1-year chart, actually over the past year, the yield on the U.S. Treasury has been going down. Right here, roughly 4.5% a year ago, and this morning it is, as of right now, 4.17. So more than 30 basis points or so have it's been there's been a decline over the past year. Of course, it goes up and down and up and down, but down. But so people who say that, oh, people are losing faith in the dollar, they're shedding their U.S. Treasuries, um, and China especially is dumping U.S. Treasuries, and this is going to make all these dollars come back to America, and interest rates are going to spike because no one's going to want the U.S. Treasuries, and it's not happening. It's not happening. And even though China is getting away from U.S. Treasuries for their own reasons, I think partly it's because they're afraid of you U.S. sanctions in the event of their invasion of Taiwan, which I think is on the schedule. But it's also because their economy is in terrible shape right now, and especially when the government is asking, right, asking with a gun in one hand, when they're asking banks to sort of move away from U.S. Treasuries, they are asking them to don't put your money into U.S. Treasuries. Please put your money into Chinese yuan Treasuries, because right now the central government in China is in terrible shape. The economy is in terrible shape, and they need their banks to keep the money inside China and don't go out, don't be exporting their money back to the U.S. Um, but keep it inside China and buy buy the Chinese government treasuries, Chinese debt. But anyway, for whatever reason, China is reducing, but it's not having the kind of effect that people were predicting on the overall situation of the dollar. Yes, there is some de-dollarization going on, but that's only natural because people are diversifying and people are buying gold for various reasons. You know, one thing is to avoid sanctions by the U.S. government, and also just diversification is always a good idea. You don't want to be concentrated too much on one asset. That's just financial common sense. But overall, the sort of the foreign attack on the U.S. dollar is not really taking place. And actually, foreign holdings of U.S. Treasuries has actually been going up. Let me share this Reuters story with you. Now, this is a January story, so it gives a little more of an update than what we saw a while ago in September. But here, the foreign holdings of U.S. Treasuries at all-time high in November, but China pulls back. Okay, we know China's pulling back, but overall, foreign holdings of U.S. Treasuries was at an all-time high in November. So it's not that people are losing faith in the dollar. They're still putting their money into U.S. Treasuries because that's still considered to be the safest investment. Foreign holdings of U.S. Treasuries hit record highs in November, rising after 2 straight months of declines as market sentiment improved after the U.S. federal government ended its longest ever shutdown in history. So we're talking about November now. Okay, so that's what happened back then. The U.S. government, okay, holdings of U.S. Treasuries rose to an all-time high of 9.355 trillion, so 9,355 billion in November, up from October's $9,243 billion. Data from the Treasury Department showed on Thursday. Compared with a year earlier, treasuries owned by foreigners were up 7.2% in November. So that's a pretty healthy increase over the course of a year. Okay. All right. And so Japan was at 1,202 billion, and Japan's treasuries have increased 11 straight months. And the UK now is the second largest, 888.5 billion, up 1.2% from October. And the UK is widely seen as a major custody hub, often serving as a proxy for hedge fund investment flows. Hedge funds also use other custody jurisdictions, including the Cayman Islands and the Bahamas. Okay, Canada also boosted its holdings by 13%. Okay, in November. So for all the fuss, they still love us. That's a big increase. this was a big turnaround from a nearly 14% drop in April, with Treasury holdings at $368 billion. Okay. In contrast, China's stash of U.S. government debt fell to $682 billion of November, the lowest since September 2008. So China is on a long-term decline. Uh, and they've declined more than 10% since the beginning of 2025. But it's not really affecting the overall treasury market, and I think that's important for us to understand. Affecting the treasury market. Well, it's the U.S. It's the U.S. owned, the Federal Reserve just and printing, and that is what is going to bring down the U.S. dollar. It's not going to be China. And as China reduces its treasury holdings this way gradually rather than all at once, its influence over the U.S. market is also declining. So back when they had well over $1 trillion, there was still fear. Oh, what are we going to do if China sells all its treasuries at once? Of course, that was never a rational fear. But now, even that, as they're now down, no longer 1.3 trillion, but now in the 600 billion range, their influence over the overall treasury market is declining, and it looks like it's going to continue to decline because they need the money. They're not selling their treasuries out of a position of strength. It's out of a position of weakness, out of desperation. Desperation. Right now in China, their economy is in serious trouble. I was watching a video on this just a while ago where, in China, uh, local governments are not allowed to tax residents, and they also don't get money from the central government. But they're responsible for things like healthcare and education. So they got to get that money someplace. So what do? Well, of course, their biggest revenue until now was that they would sell these leases of public lands. As you know, as I've said many times, in China, there is no private real estate property. You're not allowed to have private property in the state of real estate. Instead, you have leases that last for 50, 75, 100 years, depending on the conditions. And so these leases will be sold by local governments, and that's where they got their money, or a lot of the majority of their money, not all of it, but a majority of their money. But now the real estate market has collapsed, something like, and so the revenue from that is down drastically. And so they're having to come up with all sorts of creative ways to raise funds. And there was some sort of well, they and the Democratic Socialists of LA may want to get together because uh, one of the things that so various local governments are, they're really trying to be very creative. Uh, and so, for example, they would sell, well, we'll sell air rights. We'll if people want to fly drones, then they have to buy the sort of the air or the airspace in which they can fly the drones or something like that. This is apparently one of the ideas that one of the local governments had. Or one place was selling the sand, the river sand. Okay, whether that has any value or not, or they're trying to sell it anyway. Okay. So anyway, they're trying to come up with all sorts of creative ways, but basically, the Chinese economy is running into the ground, and so they're getting more and more desperate, and it's getting pretty bad there, and that's why I believe that they are. That's the main reason that they are pulling out of U.S. Treasuries. They're desperate for the money, and they don't have the um, wherewithal to be investing in foreign assets like U.S. Treasuries. Anyway, we'll see. So I think China may be coming to an end, but we'll have to wait and see about that. Right? We can always hope. We can always continue to pray. Okay. All right. Um, let's see here. We still have a little bit of time. And okay, yes, we have Newsmax now, and got some interesting stories here, I think. the president's brother is speaking, and Jorge Rodriguez, and he's the brother of the president, speaking to Newsmax. Venezuela is stabilizing since America took down Maduro, right? So forth. And but Venezuela has also ordered, or they arrested the opposition leader. He was released, but then they rearrested him just a few hours after he came out of prison. So some, back and forth going on there. And another government shutdown is coming up. So we'll see. It's political theater. RFK Jr. warfare against ultra processed foods. I think that something definitely is going on in America. Um, has been going on since the 1960s, I guess, because obesity in America was something that it's very easy to see if you are outside of America for any length of time and then go back. It's just that compared to other countries, there's clearly a problem in America. There's clearly a problem with how I say the body mass index or whatever you call it. Okay. And ultra processed foods, I would say, yeah, it's a very likely culprit. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. warned Monday that America's reliance on heavily processed foods is harming children, describing efforts to reduce such foods as spiritual warfare, the Washington Examiner reported. Kennedy made the comments in a sit down with Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts to mark 1 year of his Make America Healthy Again initiative. Kennedy argued that ultra processed foods dominate the American diet and fuel chronic disease, particularly among children. Um, when you go to the when you go to wait a second, what happened here? Oh, did I get kicked off? No, actually, I'm still there. All right. Okay. When you go to the supermarket, observe. It's interesting to observe. People go in the door, right? And uh, eh, different supermarkets have different arrangements, obviously, but always you have fruits and vegetables and bread on one side, and then in another direction you have, well, ultra processed foods. And there are people who will just without even thinking will go one way or the other when they enter the front door. And I always liked that when my wife would enter a supermarket, she would always go towards the fruits and vegetables and meat, and bread and stuff like that, and would not even, go into the aisles of all the ultra processed foods, except maybe in some, maybe a few instances, but 90% of her shopping was done in the fruits, vegetables, bread, and meat aisles. And all this other stuff that is over here, she would ignore that, I think, 99% of the time. And there are a lot of people who do that, but then there are other people who do the opposite. They'll go this way, and they're buying the chips, they're buying the cookies, they're buying, um, the stuff over here, and the ready-made meals, those kinds of things. Just pop it in the microwave, those kinds of things. And I really think that is indicative of the problem that America is facing right now. But, anyway, so I applaud not President, Secretary Kennedy on his work to um, win this, what he calls this spiritual warfare. Now, it's a spiritual warfare. It's a war at scale against cellular activity. It's an assault on our children, Kennedy said, pointing to administration data showing that roughly 70% of what American children consume falls into the ultra processed category. Kennedy compared the health impact of ultra-processed foods to tobacco, saying they are much worse than cigarettes when it comes to long-term damage. There was a video that I saw some time ago now where someone was, I think it was an American, was interviewing Japanese children, and he asked them, "What is your favorite food?" And he said the first person he asked said something like asparagus or something like that. It was a vegetable. And he thought, wait a second, maybe this kid has been coached to answer that way. So he kept on interviewing, but they all answered in similar ways, one vegetable or another or something like that. And none of them were saying Oreo cookies or Dorito chips or anything like that. They're all giving healthy foods as their favorite food. Yeah, and I think that's actually right. I don't think that was fake at all. I think that is genuine because that is how Japanese children are taught, right? And that's what their mothers feed them for one thing. Yeah. You don't see many bags of Doritos hanging around Japanese homes or anything like that. And yes, and so I think that really explains, to me anyway, that explains the problem that America is having with um, with obesity. Okay, and I know, all body types are beautiful. Okay, 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 but not all body types are healthy. Okay, all right. Yes. Okay. So here, while critics have accused Kennedy of favoring government overreach, he rejected the idea that his agenda amounts to a nanny state. Well, yeah, I can see how that could be true too. Okay. But it has to be education. It does, rather than dictatorship or nanny state. Kennedy said Americans should retain the freedom to choose whatever they eat, including soda or desserts, but deserve transparency and honest guidance about the health consequences of those choices. I'm not going to take away anybody's donuts or Coca-Cola, Kennedy said, emphasizing that personal responsibility must be paired with accurate information. Kennedy also criticized what he described as corporate influence over nutrition science and public health messaging, urging parents to approach food marketing and official guidance with fierce skepticism. He argued that government and industry have failed to adequately protect children from harmful dietary trends. Part of it, of course, is that American mothers often have to work, and it's tough to do maybe one, maybe even two, maybe even three jobs, and then come home and you have to fix meals for your children. That's tough. That is really tough. And so, of course, they're going to just sort of do the quick thing, right? So have something that you can pop into the microwave, or even worse, donuts, or cooking donuts for breakfast. I don't know if anybody actually does that, but something like that. Or if they have breakfast at all. Yeah. So as part of his agenda, Kennedy has pushed for revisions to the federal dietary guidelines for Americans, calling for a greater emphasis on protein, healthy fats, and whole foods over refined carbohydrates and processed products. Yes. Yes. Well, yeah, I think he's certainly on the right track. He is certainly on the right track. All right. All right. Let's see here. My wife was joked that she likes going to America because in America she counts as thin. Yeah, I think she's probably not the only Asian woman who feels that way. All right, let's see here. Uh, Seeks to limit fired workers' legal options. Okay. And here, what do we have here? Pollster Alico GOP holds Alaska and Maine seats. Right. Okay. And Chip Roy says voter ID opposition, ultimate racism. This is an interesting case where the Democrats are absolutely opposed to this, and yet poll after poll shows that a strong majority, not just a narrow majority, but a strong majority of Americans say, yeah, yeah, of course, we want voter ID. And of course, this is common sense in other countries. Democrat opposition to the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, or Save America Act, is rooted in politics, not public sentiment, as the legislation he introduced with Senator Mike Lee, Republican of Utah, moves forward a possible House floor vote this week toward a upload. Okay, right. So they want to make sure they protect a constituency that is, they think, going to help them politically. Roy dismissed claims, that this legislation would disenfranchise minorities, calling it Jim Crow 2.0. Uh, I don't- Look, yeah, this is true. Upward of 80% of minorities, Hispanics, Black Americans support voter ID. And this is reflecting a patronizing attitude toward minority voters. Yes, this is true. It's the ultimate form of racism, the classic white liberal to be standing up and saying that somehow this is going to disadvantage poor minority or rural people. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Trump apparently is calling for the Dow to go to 100,000. Okay, well, okay. I wouldn't hold my breath, and yeah, the halftime show. Yeah, okay, well, let's not do that. Ghislaine Maxwell was deposed by Congress, and she did not answer any questions. She pled the fifth. Chinese fighters flew risky maneuvers near Taiwan. Okay, and as the Lunar New Year approaches next week, uh, Chinese military are sort of doing a lot of incursions into Taiwan's waters and so forth, and that happens all the time. Okay, but you never know when it could be the actual invasion. Cuba warns airlines it'll run out of jet fuel. Hmm. So yeah, Cuba looks like it's coming to the end of its rope. Uh, Cuba warned international airlines that jet fuel will no longer be available on the island beginning on Tuesday. It's today, right? In the latest sign of fast worsening conditions as the United States moves to cut off the communist run nation's oil supply. So maybe after well over 60 years, finally something is being done to liberate Cuba from communism. So I guess airlines are refueling in Panama, Bahamas, Dominican Republic, and the U.S. Most airline flights into Havana appeared on time and on schedule on Monday morning. Okay, well, we'll see. But of course, they don't have the fuel for, or they, I guess they do produce some of their own oil, and they do have a refinery, but they are running out of the fuel, and they don't have enough to actually sort of keep the lights on. So we'll see what happens. Mark Zuckerberg, the latest California billionaire to buy a Florida home. Okay. Everybody's getting out of California. Fetterman urges Rubio to halt library passport ban. What on earth is that? Library passport ban. Delay the Trump administration's decision to bar local libraries from serving as passport acceptance facilities. warning the move could trigger job losses, service disruptions, and reduced access for millions of Americans. So uh, I guess people are able to apply for their passports at libraries. Is that right? Apparently so. I wasn't aware of that. I thought you had to go to a post office. 501c3 nonprofit libraries are ineligible to operate as passport acceptance facilities under federal law. Despite doing so for years, in some cases decades, libraries were notified of the change in November and given until February 13th to cease passport services. I see. Okay. Hmm. That's interesting. I didn't even realize that you could apply for a passport at a library. But it's easy enough to do it online these days. Okay. But I don't know why then. Okay, shots fired at oil tankers as U.S. warship confronts Iran. Okay, let's see here. Let's go to here. Oh, yes, that poor lady. Uh, I hope she gets whatever. I don't know if she's alive or what, but I hope this situation can be resolved quickly. Okay, and so they're still arguing about ICE. Okay, even though, of course, past presidents have deported a lot more people than Trump has. And this is an interesting one. Trump threatens to block the opening of a bridge between the U.S. and Canada, a new bridge between Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit. And President Trump is saying, "Whoops, okay, they want me to subscribe. Okay, all right, well, no, not going to do that. Okay." Um, and uh, Come on, they never did that to me before. Okay. Yeah. Trump has threatened to block the opening of a bridge connecting the US and Canada until Washington is fully compensated for everything it has given to its northern neighbor. So the Canadians have paid for the bridge, okay, but Trump is talking about other stuff. He says that we've given you a lot of stuff over the years, and you can pay us back by giving us half that bridge. Okay. Uh, and Euro USD soars past 1.19 as China Treasury news sinks the US dollar. Yeah, I think this is maybe a little bit. Let's check trading economics here. Forex. Well, actually, it's not sinking at all. In fact, it's up. It's up 0.1%. But what about the euro? What about the euro? The euro is actually down right now. So that article is a little bit old. Yeah. Euro is down against the dollar. Maybe at one point it was surging, I suppose. Okay, so yeah, let's look at a more long-term 10-year chart. Okay, so over 10 years, there isn't a lot of changes. It goes up, it goes down. Right now, it's up. Where the euro is up against the dollar right now, but it's been higher in the past. It got up to what is this? 1.24, almost 25 in the past. And then here's another peak at 1.22. And now it's at what, 1.18 or 19. Yeah, so it's not a huge difference. Yeah. A lot of clickbait going on. All right, let's see here. Chinese and Russia decline could become global problems. This is interesting. I may have to do this story tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, right? So tomorrow we're going to do a OSTP, but at some point in the future, I'm going to put a bookmark on this one. Chinese and Russian decline could become global problems. And yeah, I've talked before about how um, if um, if China collapses, it's going to be a huge mess for the entire world economy, because China is so much more integrated into the world economy than Russia was in the early 1990s when it collapsed. All right. For now, let's go and have a good day and be with God today. And tomorrow we'll have another OSTP session. Tomorrow's Wednesday, right? Yes, it is. So we'll have another OSTP session tomorrow. So please join me then. God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly.